The Devil Rides at Night. Jason was a part-time mechanic and a full-time speed junkie. He loved motorbikes, racing them, fixing them, and dreaming of owning the rarest ones. One rainy Saturday morning, while browsing local listings, he came across something that made his heart skip. 1948 Vincent Black Shadow, original parts. Price, $800. No returns. Must pick up. Cash only. Address, Red Hollow Road. He blinked. That bike was worth tens of thousands. Why so cheap? It didn't matter. He called, but no one answered. The ad simply said, "Come before dark." Curiosity won. He stuffed $800 in his jacket and rode his Honda down the twisting, mist-choked backroads to Red Hollow Road. The house was ancient, gray wood, moss growing through cracked shutters. The door was ajar. No one greeted him, but the bike was there. In the garage. Pristine. Almost glowing. He left the money on a dusty workbench and wheeled it out. As he touched the handlebars, the cold metal sent a chill up his arm. Jason didn't wait. He revved the bike once. It purred, impossibly smooth for a 75-year-old machine. He turned onto the road, feeling the weight of it hum beneath him like a living thing. The first sign that something was wrong came when he glanced in the mirror. There was no reflection. Not of him. Not of the bike. Just the road behind, empty and stretching into a blur. He shook it off as a trick of the light. But then the road changed. The sky darkened far too fast. He was riding through countryside he knew well, yet nothing looked familiar. The trees were dead. The signs were blank. He passed the same crumpled, blood-red stop sign 3 times. His phone had no signal. No time. No battery. The bike would not slow. Even as he pulled the brakes, they resisted. The bike just roared forward, as if possessed. Jason screamed at it, tried to jump, but his legs wouldn't move. They were locked. Glued to the machine. Up ahead, someone stood in the road. A man in a long leather coat. His eyes glowed faintly red. As Jason roared closer, he should have swerved, should have tried to stop, but something inside told him, "He's the one who gave you the bike." The man didn't move. And Jason didn't stop. He passed through him. The cold was instant and unbearable. The man's face, burned into Jason's memory, was twisted, hollow, with a mouth that opened impossibly wide as he whispered, "One rider in. One rider out." Time lost meaning. Jason rode for hours. Or days. He began to hear things in the wind. Whispers. Screams. And laughter, cruel, hollow laughter that seemed to chase him through the trees. Shadows ran alongside him. Shapes on foot. Some on bikes. All eyeless. All bound to their machines. He passed them. He joined them. Each rider moved in a loop, bound to this road, their spirits long bled into their bikes. Ghost engines howled in the eternal night. A never-ending ride for those who had taken the deal. And now Jason understood. The bike wasn't a gift. It was bait. Once, after what felt like years, Jason saw an opening. A light ahead. A gas station. Civilization. He twisted the throttle, speeding toward it. As he neared, he passed a rusted sign on the side of the road, Red Hollow Road. Population, 1, he screamed as he crossed the threshold, and fell. Off the bike. Onto cold pavement. He woke up in a hospital. Bystanders had found him collapsed at a crossroads, no bike in sight. No ID. Just $800 in his jacket and a single note clutched in his fist, "The devil lets one go every decade. You're free. For now." 2 weeks later, a college student browsing used motorcycles saw something odd. 1948 Vincent Black Shadow, original parts. $800. Cash only. Must pick up. No returns. Red Hollow Road. They grinned, eyes wide. And they clicked, message seller. The call center at midnight. It was well past midnight, and the call center on the 15th floor of the aging high-rise was eerily quiet. Most of the employees had already gone home, leaving just a skeleton crew of night shifters to handle the calls that trickled in from the West Coast and international clients. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting long, unsettling shadows that stretched across the rows of cubicles. Among the few still working, Emily sat in her cubicle, her tired eyes scanning the list of customer complaints on her computer screen. She had been with the company for almost 2 years, and though she was used to the late-night grind, tonight felt different. The air seemed thicker, heavier, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Emily wasn't alone. In the far corner of the room, Carlos and Jake were talking quietly. Carlos had just returned from the break room with a coffee, his face pale and drawn. Jake, always the skeptic, laughed at something Carlos had said, but there was an edge to his voice that made Emily pause. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, looking around the empty office. Carlos nodded, his eyes wide. "It came from the storage room. Like something scraping against the walls." Emily tried to ignore the creeping sense of unease, but her stomach churned. She had heard it too. A faint scraping sound, as though someone was dragging something heavy across the floor in the storage room. It was strange, the storage room had been locked for months, ever since the company's IT department had moved out. "Maybe it's just the building settling," Emily suggested, trying to sound casual. But as the night wore on, the odd noises grew louder. It was no longer just the scraping, now there was a soft, almost imperceptible tapping, like fingers drumming against the wall. Emily couldn't focus on her work anymore. Her mind kept drifting back to the noise, a gnawing anxiety building in her chest. Then, the calls started. They were like any other calls at first, customers asking about their billing, troubleshooting issues, the usual. But something about the tone of the voices unsettled her. They sounded hollow, distant. As if the people on the other end weren't entirely human. At first, Emily dismissed it as fatigue. Maybe it was the late hour, or maybe the static on the line was messing with her perception. But then came the call that made her blood run cold. The phone rang at exactly 2:37 a.m. The number was unlisted, the screen showing only a series of random digits. Emily hesitated before picking up the receiver. "Hello, thank you for calling," she said, forcing cheer into her voice. "This is Emily, how can I assist you tonight?" There was a long pause before a voice answered. It was low, guttural, distorted. The words were barely comprehensible. "I'm here." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She leaned closer to the receiver, her fingers tightening around the cold plastic. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that." "Who am I speaking with?" she asked, trying to maintain professionalism despite the chill creeping down her spine. The voice rasped again, each syllable dripping with malice. "I'm here. And you're next." The call cut out, leaving only static on the line. Emily stared at the phone in her hand, heart pounding. She quickly hung up and dialed her supervisor, but the line was dead. No dial tone, no connection. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She glanced around the office. Carlos and Jake had stopped talking. Carlos looked toward the storage room, his face pale, while Jake stared at the phone in his hand, visibly shaking. "What's wrong?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. I just got a call," Jake muttered, eyes wide. It was the same. Just that voice. Emily's blood ran cold. "What did it say?" Jake swallowed hard. "It said, 'I'm coming for you.'" Before they could process what was happening, the lights above them flickered violently, then went out. The entire floor was plunged into darkness. The soft hum of the computers was the only sound in the room now. Emily's heart raced. She fumbled for the flashlight app on her phone and switched it on, casting a narrow beam of light across the room. But in the darkness, she saw something that made her freeze. There was movement in the shadows. A figure. It was tall, almost unnaturally so, and it seemed to glide across the floor, its shape flickering in and out of focus like a bad television signal. Carlos. Jake. Emily whispered, but neither of them responded. They were both staring at the figure, their faces filled with a kind of terror Emily had never seen before. The figure stopped near the storage room door, which had somehow creaked open. Slowly, the thing began to move toward the door, its eyes, if you could call them that, glowing faintly in the dark. Emily wanted to scream, but the words caught in her throat. The figure reached out with long, thin fingers and pushed the door open wider. Inside, she could make out something far worse than the figure itself. There, in the shadows of the storage room, was a desk. And sitting at that desk, facing the wall, was a pale, skeletal figure, its back to them. Its hands were poised above an old-fashioned rotary phone, its fingers twitching unnaturally as if it were waiting for a call. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, as the figure on the phone slowly turned its head toward them, revealing a face that was nothing but empty sockets and stretched, cracked skin. The voice they had all heard earlier echoed in their minds, "I'm coming for you." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, but the room was different. The cubicles, the phones, the computers, everything was gone. The office was now just an endless, sterile hallway, stretching into infinity. Emily tried to run, but her legs felt like lead. She turned to Carlos and Jake, but they were no longer beside her. There was only the sound of heavy breathing and the faint rustling of paper. The walls seemed to close in around her, the air growing thicker with each passing second. And then, a new voice came through, one she hadn't heard before, but she recognized it instantly. "We're waiting for you, Emily." The call center wasn't just a place anymore. It was a trap, a place where time no longer mattered, where the voices of those who had been lost in the building echoed forever, waiting for their next victim. And Emily was next. The phone rang at exactly 2:37 a.m. the following night.